Welcome to Sense1 subscribers, non-subscribers, hopefully soon to be subscribers, to the Bleach Rankings Bankai video. The rules are set forth here. Please read them and understand that this was the criteria used to make this video much easier. As explained, zanpakuto that are not strictly belonging to regular Shimigami, their extra added powers are counted towards their zanpakuto and their Bankai as long as it doesn't conflict. An example would be Suzumushi. If you're going to use the Bankai, you cannot go res. You would have to choose one or the other, because when you go into res with the zanpakuto itself disappears, thus not allowing someone to use that Bankai. With that, let's get into the video. The unranked section is nice, short, and sweet. We have Fushi no Kojo, which is Shuhei's, Shirafude Ichimonji, which belongs to Ichibei, and Sakasama Yokoshima Happu Fusugari. I murdered that, I know, but that one belongs to Shinji. Basically, Fushi no Kojo doesn't allow for a win condition. It only allows draws unless it's fighting multiple people or you have a teammate. Ichibei's relies on its Shikai. Something has to already be splattered with the ink for it to be rewritten over using the Bankai ability. And Shinji's Bankai is just useless in a one-on-one fight. You'd have to be fighting a bunch of other people who are enemies or unaligned with each other. It's super specific and basically useless. Kicking off the actual list, we have C tier. Now, the reason there's no D tier is because I think all of these Bankai have some ability that make them extremely useful, so there's really no D tier. And this is sad because I really do love Tekken Tachikaze. At 22, we have Ryumom and Hōzukimaru. Now, the reason this one's so low is just because it doesn't do anything. It's a massive output of attack power, but it's still very fragile. What does keep it out of being a D tier type Bankai is that the power can exponentially increase as the Bankai wakes up, increasing its attack power. That's really about it. At number 21, we have Soo Zabimaru. Now, I know people like Renji a lot and like his Bankai, but this really isn't that great compared to some of the others. Yes, it has an energy snake biting attack, but you kind of have to impale your opponent on the blade, and the only thing it offers is like a mid-range arm extension. That's not too crazy. Rounding out C tier with the number 20 spot, we have Tekken Tachikaze, which is one of my top 10 favorite Bankai. This Bankai is so cool. Anything the knuckles or blades touch infinitely gets exploded with compressed air. It's amazing. It would defeat Zakimaru before it ever became dangerous with its enhanced attack ability. And even though Soo Zabimaru has a mid-range attack, I mean, if you go to try to touch it and you touch those knuckles or blades or get punched away, your Bankai is getting broken and there's no coming back from that. Tekken Tachikaze in close range is one of the strongest zanpakuto ever. Now, B tier is very small. Let's get into it. Number 19, Suzumushi, Tsuishiki, Enma, Kōrogi. This Bankai is extremely useful. I mean, cutting off basically almost all the senses of your opponent would give you a massive advantage in combat. They can't see, hear, smell. They're just so overwhelmed. Essentially, unless you can blow up everything around you, break the Bankai, or have some immediate counter ability, you're getting destroyed by this Bankai 10 times out of 10. Next, at number 18, we have Koko, Gonryo, Rikyu. Now, this one's very interesting because the way I've always thought of this Bankai since its reveal was that it's basically Senbonzakura, but just lightning. Like, it creates a lightning cage around the user, and then whichever way they wave their blade, the lightning strikes. And it changes the weather at the same time. So I think it would easily overcome something like Suzumushi, but we do not know exactly what it can do, and we don't know its limits or upper potential, really. At number 17, moving on to A tier, which is a lot of them, we have Konjiki, Ashisogi, Jizo. Now remember, if you think some of these can go up or down within their tiers, I don't disagree with you because a lot of these were very close to call. But Konjiki, Ashisogi, Jizo was one of those difficult ones because essentially upon its release, it spews poison. And unless you're immune to it somehow, which none of these other abilities provide for you, or you could feasibly blow away the poison before it got to you, which it still does move pretty quickly, then you are really best get a draw. And that was one of the difficult parts about ranking this video. I basically did it, if it ends in a draw, like let's say you're fighting someone using this Bankai and you get poisoned. Well then, if you can still kill them before you would feasibly die from that poison, I counted it as a win. At number 16, we have Minazuki. This one was interesting because it was a lot higher when I first made this list, and that's because I thought it just destroyed everything. But then I went back and looked, and Minazuki seems to specifically only target living things with tissue and flesh and bone. That's mainly because most of the things we see, like Nozarashi, the surrounding rocks, the fabric, all stay intact. And I just think it would overcome Konjiki, Ashisogi, Jizo because it's a living type and the user of it, but outside of that, it would get destroyed by the ones above it. At number 15, we have Jakuhō Raikōben. The reason it gets higher than Minazuki and Konjiki, Ashisogi, Jizo is because I'm generally going to give it 2 shots, which is what we saw someone like Soifon use. Soifon isn't really prodigious, and she isn't noted to have any extreme levels of spiritual pressure, so I'd say someone could get 1 or 2 shots out of this Bankai, someone like regular spirit energy. But with that, it's basically 110% attack power. Like, if Kokujo Tengen Myo is 100% attack power, Jakuhō Raikōben is like 110%. And you get 2 of them. It would basically be able to blow away the poison along with the Bankai in 1 shot, and then you would have a second shot to blow away the person. It's just strong, but if you are fast, you could probably get around it, or if you're pretty durable, you could survive a shot. No, clearly not a direct hit, but you could survive a shot and counter possibly. That's what I determined for the ones that were higher than it. At number 14, we have the unnamed Bankai, but we'll just call it Nozarashi for this video. Nozarashi seems to be a slightly better physical amp. It seems to amp every single stat. Not all Bankai amp all stats, but this one seems to. Except intelligence. You actually seem to lose intelligence with this Bankai. You get 110% power, which could damage your body, but I think honestly, none of the Bankai behind it have any sort of defense that would be able to survive even 1 hit from this Bankai. Number 13, we have Kokujo Tengen Myo-o. And I included the Dangai Joe version because it is a possibility. However, this Bankai's weakness lies within itself. If you harm the Bankai, you harm the user. If you harm the user, you harm the Bankai. And even with the immortality ability, we know it's a time limit. And therefore, the ones above it either can match the attack power of this Bankai and basically wait out the immortality, or it can completely stop them and then the time limit will go out anyway. So no matter what, this is powerful, but it just can't beat the ones above it. At number 12, we have Senbonzakura Kageyoshi. This one is sick. It has so many different forms, so many different attacks within those forms. It's crazy. You have Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, which is millions and millions of blades coming and dicing you all at once. Then on top of that, you have Senkei, which is an arena of swords, which basically is just a compressed power of all those blades. And then you have the final form, which is Shukei Haku Tekken, which puts all of the power of the Bankai into 1 strike, basically mimicking some of the abilities under it. And then within those, it has variations like Gokei, which looks like Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, but basically just takes all the blades and collapses them in, imploding on the opponent. And even within Senkei, it has a version of Gokei, Ika Senjika, and you could just call multiple swords down. It's broken. However, I think number 11, Daiguren Hyōrinmaru, gets ahead of it because, again, you could stop those blades. You could freeze a portion of the blades and attack. This is where I think being able to freeze opponents is very useful. Even if you're being overwhelmed, you can stop being overwhelmed by at least pausing a portion of the attack. And that's why I think Daiguren Hyōrinmaru gets over. It can weather change. Its freezing capabilities are a lot higher and a lot stronger in this form, and its range is crazy. Basically, it's almost the sky, but it will always lose out to number 10, Tensa Zangetsu. No matter which version, if it's the original fake version or it's the full bring version, it just dominates. The Bankai is so much more powerful because it's basically the full bring and the hollow powers infused into the Bankai, basically giving it more than just a regular Bankai amp. And the speed and compression power that this Bankai has would be able to match any of the Bankai below it. In attack power, it would be able to match any of them in speed and potentially surpass them. This Bankai is just flat out broken. And if we're being fair, we did see some Quincy feats with this Bankai when he was able to use Blute reactively. It's dangerous. Moving on to A+Tier, we have the Bankai that I think basically have 1-hit kill potential. The 1-hit kill potential isn't guaranteed, but basically these Bankai can 1-hit stop you, and that's Kanenbaraki Benihime Aratame and Kamishini no Yari. At number 9, Kanenbaraki Benihime Aratame is just dangerous. Anything within its range of effect can be rearranged. This could be something as rearranging the bones in your arm and the muscles to make you stronger or weaker, to completely reconstruct eyes that were dead, which that's insane, by the way. And then on top of that, an even more crazy feat, it rearranged regular material and space to create a portal for Grimmjow to pop out of. This Bankai basically has almost no upper limit, and I want to specify that this Bankai list was kind of broken down between what Bankai can beat Urozakuro and which ones can't. Anything that couldn't beat it was lower than it. But I did have to say Kenenbaraki is the only Bankai under it that I wholeheartedly think probably could beat it, but I just wasn't sure because we don't know the upper limits of Kenenbaraki. But that's all I'm going to say on that. At number 8, we have Kamishini no Yari. The only reason this one's higher than Kenenbaraki is speed. Kamishini Yari gets in and out so quickly. Its speed amp is ridiculous. On top of that, it has techniques within that form. It has Buto, which basically is a super fast strike from the blade that has been able to pierce Ichigo, break his mask, things like that. You also have Buto Renjin, which is basically the machine gun version of it. And in the data book, its power is labeled as immeasurable. Now, I'm not going to say it's infinite, it's crazy, but I would say that probably means it's just as powerful as any of the attack the other characters around him can produce. On top of that, it has a one-hit, one-kill move. If you get hit with this and it retracts while still making contact with you, the fight is basically over. And that applies to really most of the Bankai under it. One important concept to note is that even though Aizen was in a form that gave him high-speed regeneration, his high-speed regeneration could not keep up with the poisoning effects of Gin's kill ability. Moving on to the special S tier, we have the thing that defined the list, Urozakuro. The reason this one's kind of the gauge for this list is because it has a very broken ability that very few things can overcome. So basically this Bankai, the moment it's activated, or in the case of Azashiro, it's always active, he begins to fuse with the environment around him, and it's specified that the only way you can defeat this is if you can attack his soul directly, attack his spirit energy directly, or you can destroy the environment. Destroying the environment can be done in a couple ways as specified. If you have enough spiritual pressure, it's shown that you can actually destroy spiritual matter. We saw Kenpachi do this with his freakish power. Or you can do it by just having existence erasure abilities. But I believe there's one more way to get around it, and that's the number 6 spot, Kinshara Butoden. Kinshara Butoden basically uses your ability to hear against you. And we know for a fact Urozakuro can still hear, even when he doesn't have physical ears. Kinshara Butoden basically can cause someone to experience the pain of fire or the sensation of drowning through the musical streams that it plays. Essentially, they can't be countered unless you stop yourself from hearing, but not many people are going to know to do that or know that's the reason they're being affected by it. Kinshara Butoden also is implied to have a move that just basically kills you once you hear it, because there have been things in mythology like death tones, and I think that's where Kubo was going with that final play before Mask popped his eardrums. Number 5, we have another guaranteed kill Bankai, Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju. This one really doesn't need much explaining. It's a 4-stage Bankai, where each successive stage is triggered by another, which basically leads to you popping your opponent's head with very little effort. The first stage is sharing of wounds. Shunsui points out that this stage can't kill you, and that's probably because if you kill the user of the Bankai, you yourself couldn't experience the reflection of that because they would die. Basically, if you can't kill in that one shot, it's game over for you, because the moment you hit that second stage, you're going to be poisoned. If you get to the third stage, you're going to drown, and if you keep trying to attack, you're going to get your head popped with your own spirit energy. It's a dangerous Bankai that no one should ever have the displeasure of facing. At number 4, we have Gagaku Kairo, the one Bankai that is explicitly stated to be able to defeat Urozakuro in the book. Basically, what Gagaku Kairo does is it takes the concept of his living zanpakuto from the Shikai form, which creates these little white monsters or large white monsters with teeth, and turns the entire environment into a large set of jaws that swallows up everything around it, except the user of the zanpakuto. Basically, even if you were as Urozakuro, if you infuse yourself in the environment, it's getting eaten along with everything else, so there's nothing for you to do, there's nowhere for you to run. Number 3, we have the all-powerful Tensa Zangetsu. Now, Tensa Zangetsu from the 1,000 Year Blood War is powerful. It has all the same abilities I gushed about for the Shikai, having the ability to use Sero and potentially Bala and the Horn of Salvation form. It's crazy powerful, and looking at what Yuha said about it, the amp for it must be insane. At number 2, we have Haka no Tagame. Again, upon activation, if we were to start the fight and both combatants activate their Bankai and get to battling, no one's gonna beat Haka no Tagame. Well, very few, maybe. You could argue Tensa Zangetsu very much could. I don't think any of the Zanpakuto under Tensaga Zangetsu have a chance of beating Haka no Tagame or the number 1 spot, but Haka no Tagame basically takes the concept of absolute zero and with a sword slash freezes everything around the user, and then everything it's swiped at. Instant death. Your molecules stop so hard, so fast, you literally crumple away basically at an atomic level. It's insanely powerful. And if the matured form allows Rukia to basically move around and still do this, she's going to be one of the most powerful characters in Bleach's history. And at number 1, the one we all knew was going to be here, Zanka no Tachi. It's just so broken. It has basically 4 stages like Shunsui's. East, which is just the compressing all of the Bankai's flames to the tip of his blade, giving it existence erasure. Then West, which is you wear the sun basically as a suit of armor. Reminds me of Karna. Then you have South, which all the people slain by the Zanpakuto, their ashes come back and fight as an army. I'm not going to grant it for this fight because we would have to have killed a lot of people to use this ability, which isn't fair technically. But even if I don't count it, it still has North, which is basically its version of Getsuga Tensho, or just East longer. So even with the Garment of the Sun, East and North, this Zanpakuto is not losing to anyone. Haka no Tagame could, yes, potentially put out the sun, but again, I think the heat of the sun would overcome the absolute zero of the Bankai. If you disagree, then put Haka no Tagame at 1, but that's my list. Alright guys, thank you for watching. I know this was a long one and I had to start really burning through fast because I didn't realize how long this video was. Y'all have a good day. Love y'all. Bye.